Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're in YouTube, you'll see a little link down below. You can click on it and join Zoom. If you're in Zoom, you can see a little link down below and join Mokana, and that's a place where you can ask questions and also chat with everybody else that's here. And if you think that you actually have answers for those questions, we'd love to have you on the panel. This panel is constantly evolving and attracting some of the best and brightest, and we would love to have you here. You just need to get here a little early, 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, to do mic checks. If you're not sure if you're ready, then you want to just come test and see how things are going, you can come earlier. 6 o'clock was when we opened the doors, and we're just chit-chatting. I'm not going to promise anything at 6 o'clock, but during that time, it's really there for you to come in and test the gear that you have and see if you're ready to be part of the panel. But please join us. If the 7 o'clock is when we actually start open questions. It's general Q&A, so it's anything you want to ask about media and virtual production. Second hour is something that is a little bit more vertical, something we've decided that we think is important that we'd like to talk about a little bit more. Today, we're going to talk about comms, so make sure to tag it as comms. Really comms etiquette and comms design, not so much the technology, but really how we think about it and also how we operate on it. I think that was the last little piece of comms that we want to discuss before we start possibly bringing some vendors in to talk to them. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about AV sync. We talked a lot about it over the weekend, and I thought it would be worth spending an extra hour on of just how things get out of sync and then also how we get them back in. So we're going to talk about AV sync tomorrow. On Thursday, we're going to talk about integrating all the social platforms. So how do we, if we do an event, do we just broadcast to all of them, or do we use each one of them in a different way throughout that event? So we're going to talk about that on Thursday. Friday is the last of the 4-part series on AWS. It's been amazing. I would highly recommend going back and looking at the older ones, and then going forward and being part of the Friday discussion. It's turned out really, really well. Saturday, of course, is education. We are starting Unreal, the Unreal training. Nick Jushishin put out a video. It's in the email that you get every morning. That's there, and he put out an email that's a little overview of what you need to get ready for Saturday, just how to download things and basically what to download and how to put it together. So he's that do as much as you can before Saturday. Be set up. It's a 4-week course. So and of course the cost is free. So anyway, at 10 o'clock to 11:30. This is going to be a little bit more of a lab, so we do expect you to be ready to. I mean, we'd love to have you actually follow along and ask questions as opposed to just watching. We're going to do some tests with Michael Ball at 11:30, and then at 5 o'clock, we're still working out a little bit of the details, but we're going to do something where we all try to cook together from our kitchens with single camera, multi-camera. We're going to be doing something with Mad in the Kitchen 2 weeks from Saturday. And we want to kind of figure our stuff out and figure out what's working and not working. And so I'll have more details for you probably tomorrow about what we might be doing. Right now, I'm leaning towards bread, even though I've been trying not to eat bread. But we may still do it because it's easy for everybody to have the components. But we'll see how that goes. Anyway, so stay tuned for that. But if you feel like it, 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, we're gonna try to all cook in one place over Zoom and see what it feels like and what it looks like. So stay tuned. Guy, are you ready for our first question?
Yeah, let's go. Ruben Marchena in Grand Rapids, Michigan asks, what are the results of the Raspberry Pi video testing? Can it actually run as a video player for the ATEM Mini Pro?
It absolutely can. I don't have it running right now because I tore it apart to show it on a show. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Actually, I did a thing yesterday on one of my other shows where I used the Raspberry Pi outside of the ATEM Mini, and I did have a couple problems with it. I do have it sitting right here, so I could play it, but I did have a couple problems in getting some of the videos to play. And of course, there was a volume issue, which I've reported to Jonas as we go. But inside the ATEM, it works pretty much like a champ. You might have a small issue now and then when you hit the play button, it not playing, but it depends on what type of videos you put into and the consistency of the videos that you put into the mix.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I find it works pretty well. The only thing feature I'm waiting for, and I know he's still working on it, and it's problematic, is the auto start. So if you're using it with the ATEM, where it will auto start playing the video as soon as you put that channel on the air, and I know he's working on it. But
the thing that I'm looking at using probably a couple of these is not so much to auto start or to control from the ATEM or other things like that, but is to have things that I can just cut to that are just looping. They're just looping there. There are things like there's time lapses, looping, we'll be right back slides, other things that are there that are all, just in a loop that I can cut to. So that's, having a couple different things that I might have queued up that I can have a queue for each one of them, on different tabs, and just say, I want to grab a couple of these and I want to grab a couple of these across there is something that I'm interested in. There is a little bit of tearing here and there that I know that Jonas is working on. But I think that's where I see them being the most useful in their current state. I haven't had a chance to test the PC version either yet, so it'll be interesting to see that too. Next question.
Next one is from Jonas Datel in Reutlingen, Germany. Best way to mic an organ. He also put a picture up in the Discord for those of you who want to take a look at it. And he has a note here that says, organ is in the back of a church, flat walls, new design.
Any ideas about how, go ahead, Jeff. When I say any ideas, it's mostly just waiting for Jeff to say something.
So there's the picture that Jonas put up in Discord. Which shows us, it looks like the front of the church, so we don't actually see the organ. Maybe we see the organ console there. But looking at that, the first thing I think is that that's probably a electronic organ, just because it seems to be a newer space and doesn't seem to be a large cathedral. And true pipe organs are really expensive. So a true pipe organ actually blows air through pipes. And usually they will place the pipes out to be very visible because they're very proud of all the money they spent on this organ. Electronic organs use their own dedicated speaker systems that they will often put in chambers. So they'll build little rooms that open up into the sanctuary, and they put the speakers in there so things, bounce off of walls before they come out for the congregation to hear it. Either way, when you're thinking about miking that, what you want is distance. You're really miking the room, not the organ. Oftentimes you need very tall mic stands. So think about like lighting stands from Manfrotto. Be very careful about putting heavy microphones way up in the air. So sandbags and other kinds of things to help that. And omnidirectional microphones are great if they're single diaphragm omnidirectional, so not a switchable polar pattern, because they have very good low frequency response. And pipe organs can get very low, oftentimes below the range of human hearing, down to the vibrational kind of frequencies. So omnis will be flat all the way from below hearing to above hearing. So a stereo pair of omnis is probably where I would start.
Are there mics that really get down there that will record below into that vibrational area?
Shep's MK2, they make two different sets of electronics, one of which has to roll off at 10 hertz, and the other one I think goes down to 5 hertz. Because a single diaphragm pressure omni is really just a barometer. You take a diaphragm, you open it on one side, and so it will pick up as low as you want it to. Basically, they have to open the back of the mic so the mics don't get damaged when you go up in an airplane or go to Denver when the pressure changes. So the back of the mic is supposed to be sealed, and then they open it so it acclimates to atmospheric pressure very slowly.
Craig?
Another option for the microphones is not just tall stands, but if there's any option with hanging the microphones from the ceiling or from something up high.
Mickey, did you have your hand up? No.
No, Jeffrey covered it.
And then Sanken makes the one that goes up to 100, right? Up to 100
yeah,
kilohertz.
they make the high frequency mics.
I really want to play with that. I have no idea what I would do with it, but I know some sound designers that like those mics, because you can just grab, there's things out there in the world that are making noise that you can't hear, and they can bring those back down to a place where you can hear them, and they sound just very different. What were you say, Jeff?
Exactly that if you're going to take and create sound effects and do that by pitching things down, slowing them down, then all that high frequency stuff is really important. So being able to record at 192 kilohertz, or even using DSD and recording at 384 kilohertz, that you can slow that stuff way down and still have audio fidelity.
Right. Jason and then Mickey.
That brought up a follow-up question for me. Jeff, how important is it to have a stereo image when you're recording something like a pipe organ?
The actual left-right is not so important, but you definitely want a sense of the space. You want a sense of the total environment, so it's capturing that. So you may not necessarily think of it as horizontally left to right. Sometimes, not necessarily with pipe organ, but sometimes I will actually put a stereo pair vertically. If I want broad stereo, but if I have instruments on the left and instruments on the right, and I don't want them to appear so far left and right, I will actually stack my microphones vertically to get a sense of the space in stereo, but then the instruments become more mono, or more centered at least, not mono.
Good, Mickey and then Marty.
There's a YouTube channel that I follow, Rob Scallion. He covered one of the largest pipe organs in the world, which is in Chicago. And the pipe organ is essentially, the entire cathedral is the instrument, like pipes all over. But in case there is no, what do you call this, echo chamber in the church, and it's just a straight out electronic organ, you would need a 2-channel DI to get the stereo feed from that organ and feed that into a mixing board.
Good, Marty.
And Jonas did clarify that it is a true pipe organ, no speakers.
Oh, good. Yeah, the room is definitely a part of the organ. And for low frequency, I was just talking with someone else about this, who were using a really good microphone from Earthworks. And Earthworks is another very broadband microphone that'll capture the really lows and the very highs, but he can't get any bass response out of the mics. And when you're dealing with low frequencies, any room that has dimensions will have room modes where in certain locations in the room, the low frequencies will just cancel each other out. And then a few feet away from that, the low frequencies will actually be reinforced. They'll be louder. And so it's possible that in the person that I was speaking to that can't get any bass response, they were in a cancellation zone. And so just moving your mics around and listening, trying to get the best frequency response and low end response is important.
Good. Courtney and then Chris.
Yeah, so a question for Jeff. Would you ever try using binaural recording with a dummy head and 2 microphones that could be positioned in a sweet spot somewhere in the cathedral to get a full 3-dimensional kind of representation of the space?
I'd love to. The trouble with binaural is it has to be listened to on headphones. You listen to it on speakers and you get a double set. Basically, it's designed to capture what's right at the eardrum. And so the dummy head has all of the head shadowing and time of arrival cues and pinna cues that a human head has. And if you play it out of speakers, then you get a double set of those because you have both the dummy head and your head, which in my case might be a dummy head too.
Go ahead, Chris.
That's really funny. I don't know what the business model was, but when I was a kid, there was a place called Pizza and Pipes that we used to go to all the time. And they had a giant pipe organ in a pizza parlor. And I'd love to know how
somebody had something burned down and they just had a good deal on a pipe organ.
It was like in a barn. It was like in a barn almost. Yeah. And my favorite part was there was a little monkey with cymbals.
Yeah,
that would play.
There we go. Mickey, did you have something?
Sorry. I lost my train of thought.
Okay. All right. Next question.
It was the monkey comment there that made Mickey lose his thought. Leo Mendel from London, UK asked, Teamviewer has signed a 5-year deal with Mercedes F1 and Formula E. This follows from Zoom last week. What's next and how will this change the delivery of sport?
Is Formula One starting up right now? Is the season starting? So this is, I mean, let me just be crass about it. This is Formula One getting a bunch of free stuff. The season starts and they start doing releases because they said, we'll announce this when the season starts that you are working with us. But we want a whole bunch of free things like that. I mean, that's what's happening. Like there's nothing in the industry that's moving. It's just that Formula One is handing back the the stuff to as a favor to these different organizations because they gave them free things. No, I'm sorry, but I mean that's what the trend is. Nigel and I'm the one that negotiates some of those not for Formula One, for other things. So it's pretty common. Go ahead, Nigel, and then Paul.
Yeah, so the racing started last week in Dubai.
Yep.
I used to own a Formula One sponsorship for a previous company. So I can tell you the trick with those things is not how much you spend. And we spent on the car, the hat, and the helmet about 20 million a year, is how much you spend to activate. So what will be interesting is not what sponsorship is, which can be something the CEO does for their own desires. It's to watch how they use that to market, to activate that. So that's where we should look.
So Teamviewer doing ads and doing things about Formula One, and Zoom doing things, and you're right that, for these organizations like Zoom might want to do the activation, maybe that they want to do Zooms from the cockpits, or not cockpits, but from the, from the pit, type of thing.
I think you should look for promotions. I think you should look for boxing. It would be you put stuff on box. But if you're not spending between 3 and 4 times the amount of the sponsorship, it's really just a thing you're doing for your own ego.
Good, Paul.
Yeah, Austin's got a Formula One track, and I think in about a month they're going to have NASCAR there, which will be real tricky for NASCAR. But Austin is zoomed up to the top in popularity worldwide on Instagram. So we're killing it with social media and
Paul, very excited about Austin.
Right, Nigel?
Yeah,
we're killing it, right?
The I mean, I think that the Zoom one I'm kind of interested to see, because we did a hangout one time in an Indy car, and there's a dual seater that Mario Andretti has, and it was kind of a fun activation, although we thought that the person would talk more than they did, and they mostly just swore and grunted as they went around the round. There was supposed to be a conversation there, but there was just like, oh, like that's all you could hear every time you cut to their mic. But it took us like a couple days to get the wireless to work in Sonoma Raceway. So anyway, next question.
Next one's coming in from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. If using a dedicated physical network for NDI, where each machine has 2 network cards, one dedicated to NDI, is there a way to force NDI to use only the dedicated NIC?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
The answer is no, unless the device that you're using has something that can do any of the routing back and forth. NDI, it doesn't have any setting that'll say, go through this NIC, go through this NIC. It's literally just a set of marbles that they throw through the network to see where it goes. However, you can take the machine that's receiving it and go through the access manager and set up IPs to where you want the signal to come from. So it will help in the routing, but it's still, like I said, set of marbles going through your network.
Good.
Excuse me.
Guy, and then Mickey, and then Jason.
You could physically block the ports on the switch and make it so that only certain NICs will allow that. I think it's in the 5,300 range to allow that traffic, and also block the NDI discovery server so it's not seeing it. So basically, NDI is multicast, so it's very chatty trying to soak up all the ports. But if you block those ports physically, and there's some firewall settings you can also use if you wanted to block specific access by specific apps. So that might help.
Good. Mickey, and then Jason.
I don't recall exactly what command it is, but I remember on Windows, at least, I don't know on Mac, that there is a way in the command prompt to lock certain apps to certain ports. So might be a hint into what to Google for, I guess.
Jason?
Yeah, in this case, of course, it can be forced into it for the most part. NDI can be a little bit unpredictable, as evidenced by the Hulk mode that we've seen many times. But no, if you lock it down by MAC address and then isolate it separately on each client with a VLAN, I think you'd have a pretty hard time getting messed up. If that doesn't work, I'd say MDNS and a separate DHCP would almost certainly do it.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mike Keeping in Burlington, Ontario, looking for a recommendation for an external drive for the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Well, I have to start by saying I love the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. Thank you, Guy. It's been really cool to play with. The one I use is a rack mount, so that, I've got 4, let me see if I could show it to you. 5, nah, I'm not going to mess with it. I've got, 4 SSDs that I can just put in like little toaster pieces, and it's really, really handy because
So you're using the multi-dock
Yes.
with I'm sorry, I never thought of using the multi-dock with the Extreme. That's very over the top. I love that. All right, very good. Mickey.
Yeah, the ATEM ISOs record at a bitrate of 70 megabits per second, and multiply that by 9 will get you to 78, 79 megabytes per second. So even a 7200 RPM spinning drive will work for that now. Solid state would be a lot more stable than something spinning, but
Friends
don't do that.
Friends don't let friends work on spinning drives. Spinning drives are for archive. Like that's in my archive in RAIDs. You can put them in RAIDs, but don't connect them directly. Go ahead. You were gonna say anything else, Mickey?
Yeah, I was just saying, like, at that, just the minimum data speed, you could get away with a spinning drive. Of course, the faster the better.
Yep. Ken.
Yeah, the T5s are what I use. I've got a T7. I haven't tested that. I know there were issues with the T7s before, but
the issue with the
T5 is
T7
just perfect.
Yeah, the issue with the T7s was mostly with the camera when you're really doing high data rates. There's two things with the T5 and the T7. One is that with both drives, they can't handle sustained high bandwidth forever. They can handle it for a while, and I think it's a heat issue. So they'll record at full speed for the first 400 gigs, and then they slow down a lot. You won't have that problem with recording off of the switcher. That'll only happen with the camera. But the T7s would fail almost immediately on the camera on high bandwidth. I don't know if they fix that or not, but the T5s work great. I have lots of those. I have a lot of both of those, but an enormous number of T5s because they work great. Charles, and then Chris, yep, and then Nigel.
Yeah, so for 1 or 2 ISOs, maybe 3, I would go for the T5. I have a T5 2 terabyte. If you're going to ISO all 9, I would want a lot of headspace, so I would probably move up to an NVMe small RAID. At that point, you don't have to worry about it.
I think at H264, I bet you there's because the T5s are running at 900, about 900 megs a second, megabits a second, right? Or megabytes a second.
According to Amazon, I think they max out at like 500 or 600, according to them.
Oh, really? I thought I tested them
so,
higher than that. Oh, you know what? I was testing NVMEs. You're right. But just a single NVMe in a case, I was testing at 800, 900. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. So just for peace of mind, I would just go to an NVMe. If you need something more, go to the OWC Thunderblade. At that point, that's one of the top rated NVMe drives and as fast as out there.
Watch for heat for those as well. Chris, and then Nigel.
Just a point of clarification. Jason was mentioned using the multi-dock with the Extreme. Are you recording the HDMI output, or can you use it to record the USB data?
It's just a disk array. If you didn't want to use this in production and just wanted to use it to like load in hard drives, you absolutely can. There's no encoding there. It is just a pretty easy Blackmagic way to go in.
It's a Blackmagic JBOD.
Yeah, exactly.
You can even build a RAID across it if you want a software RAID.
Yeah, I mean,
so you can record the USB data out of the Extreme through it.
Yeah, it's just a drive. It just looks like
no. Well, not really. You need a separate encoder.
Well, that's what you're doing though. You're plugging those in you're plugging them into the Extreme as a drive, right?
Right. I mean, my point is, getting the USB out, it's not like you could plug a web presenter directly into that and say, okay, encode, because it's not
what I'm saying. I'm saying you're taking the USB off the Extreme, plugging it into the JBOD or the multi-dock, and you're recording the 9 potential streams that come off of the Extreme ISO.
Yes, that's exactly right. Okay. And it just goes straight into, any one of these.
Cool.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I don't have an Extreme yet on 9 inputs, but I use one of these SanDisk, and I know SanDisk is not always very popular here, but I have one of these SanDisk 1 terabyte Pro portable SSDs, and I found it useful for traveling. It's pretty easy. It's pretty light.
The SanDisk in general are relatively good drives. They had a problem with their SSD drives that they didn't write in a way that would remain stable for long periods of time in HyperDecks, and that's the only reason we cut at SanDisks, because I bought hundreds of them and couldn't quite figure out why I was having trouble. Jason, Jeffrey, and Mickey, real quick, like 10 seconds each.
So one last thing, when you get into like the high-end USB or OWC drives, Thunderbolt 3, I tried this a while ago. I haven't tried it recently, but these are not USB-C. So I doubt these would work.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
I have, for small stuff, I use the SanDisk, but for longer hour, I actually use the OWC. I got it right here. This is the OWC Dual, and an optical USB cable like you get from with your Oculus Quest. That's 16 feet, so I took it to where my ISO is, and it works really well for over an hour worth of recording.
That's great, Mickey.
Yeah, Samsung rates the 1 terabyte T5 at 540 megabytes per second. And one thing I would also recommend is that if you can hook up a drive that is not bus powered separately, that would be a safer bet as well.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Frederick Jepson in Munich, Germany. Looking for a desktop mute switch for my SM7B with the fethead. Any suggestions?
It's really tough to do a hardware switch when you've got phantom power doing anything.
Well, go ahead, Jeff.
You could, I guess you could use the Stream Deck. You could set that to be a hard mute.
Yeah, Jeff Francis.
My first question would be, is this a momentary mute or is this a switch push to talk? So is it momentary or is it as an actual switch constant? And yeah, phantom power is the big problem. I've tried a couple of these. And the third is, do you need an indication? I was looking for one that had a light that would show the people whether the mic was muted or not. But if he's looking just for himself, he's going to know. And another option is to do it, if he has a separate preamp, do it on the line level signal after the preamp. Then you don't have to deal with phantom power. You've got the mic amplified up to line level, and you're switching. Much, much easier to switch and mute a line level signal than a mic signal. Which one do you have?
Studio Technologies makes a bunch of announcer boxes. They're the best. Like it is, you can configure them in lots of different ways. They work really well. They even have a Dante solution, so you can have an announcer box that has an Ethernet cable coming out the other end. And so, so that's what we've used. And if someone pays us to put together a studio for them, what we add is one, depending on what they need. And the Studio Technology ones, you can activate, so you have a talkback. You can talk to someone. You can have separate video audio outs. So you can push one down and just do a talkback. You can push one down and go live. You can push. There's a whole bunch of these, and we've used them for a decade, and they're amazing. They're not the cheapest solution, but they are. Since you didn't give me a price point, I'm always going to give you what I think is the best one to use. Mickey, and then Jeff.
Yeah, a lot of these boxes, they're oftentimes called cough switches, and then you can find ones that have both latching and momentary settings for them. So you have the selection there. And regarding the phantom power issue, if you put the switch in between the SM7B and also the fethead, then you technically don't have to think about phantom power at all.
Jeff, and then Jan.
Thank you, Mickey. Latching was the word I could not remember. But generally, all these little boxes that are like, $50 to $100, you will find some drawback in every one of them, which is why Alex has gone to the, probably 4/7 of an Alex option for the Studio Technologies.
They run all. It depends on what console you get. So they can be in the hundreds, hundreds of dollars, low hundreds or high hundreds.
Dante is a mute button. Wow.
Yeah. No, it's pretty slick. I mean, they really work. That's all. Marty. Did you have something else, Marty?
Oh, yeah. So Mickey and Jeff, something quick and cheap that I've done before, I think. I just want to get your take on this, even with a condenser microphone, because phantom power is the same polarity on pins 2 and 3, if you just short those together, you'll maintain power to the microphone and just cancel out audio. What do you think of that?
That's what these switches are doing, but oftentimes you have so much downstream gain that the slightest problem, you're going to get a click or a snap or something like that. But that's what these are trying to do, the ones that pass phantom power.
And I'm going to go to Mickey and then Jeffrey, and then we're out. But real quick, we're going to start moving fast.
Well done, me too, Alan.
Yeah, there are times as well that the cabling isn't completely perfect. So if you do that, where you just short the wires, you can still get some sort of bleed.
Jeffrey and then Jan, 10 seconds each.
I have another device. IK Multimedia comes out with the IO Stomp, which is for guitars, but it has a microphone and it has phantom power and it has a volume pedal. So instead of a switch, you can actually fade out that way and come back in. And I'll see if it works.
Okay, Jan.
Seeing he's using a Shure, he might want to use a Shure XU2 or the MVI. Both have mute switches.
They have switches on the interface. Okay. Yep. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Leo Mandel in London, UK. I have an ISO recording of a podcast. One of the guests had bad headphones and I can hear the other guests in their audio. I have in the past cut out the quiet parts of their track. Is there a better way in Adobe Audition?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, first off, like typically that is how programming is produced. You go through everything and cut out what you don't need. So, but if you want to do it faster, Isotope RX has a debleed module in it.
That's awesome. They you know, it happens often enough. Like listen to all the, I can actually, if I have my headphones on, I can hear the headphones in most NPR broadcasts, which makes me just a little crazy. Jason and then Jeff.
Yeah, I can too, and it makes me crazy. I'm convinced it got even worse during COVID.
And by the way, it's not bad headphones. It's someone turning their headphones up too high. You know, like
yeah,
that's usually what
it's like I'm hearing them go deaf. The cheap way to do it in Audition is, you know, take everyone that isn't the one with the bleed, sum it to a bus, and then do a difference extraction, and that should get you in the ballpark.
Go ahead, Jeff, and then Marty.
I don't know what the function is in Adobe Audition, but in Pro Tools, there's strip silence. So you can just select the track and you set a threshold and it will automatically do the editing and chop out all the quiet bits.
Good.
Which hopefully is the bleed.
Right.
Yeah, that can also happen if you use the wrong kind of headphones, like if you use open back headphones where sound actually comes out the back. But another way to do it is, so this kind of bleed usually has a very limited frequency response, like it'll be mids and highs and not lows. One of the things you could do is use a dynamic expander or dynamic EQ, where it's like an expander. It'll lower the volume between words, but you only apply it in those frequencies that you need it to.
That's interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Stuart Whaley. What was the use case for Alex Lindsay's need to have a program that would output a set of photos from the middle of a video? He mentioned before the large amount of time to make this happen. Curious as to what this is used for.
So what I was talking about I don't know when I was talking about it. We talk a lot here, so I can't remember exactly where it came from. But what we were talking about is what I love looking at is movies or commercials or other things that are. I want to see what the color was, how the color was used, how the colorist approached what they did, or how the director approached it, or whoever was setting up the color. And so what I was looking for was I want to be able to drop a sequence into, let's say, anything that will do scene detection. So basically have it, or, basically every cut in the film be separated out. And then I want it to go to put the playhead at the middle of each scene, or at the middle of literally each camera angle, and export a JPEG, and then I can then sequence it into a poster. And there are people who make these posters already, but they do it by hand as far as I know. So there's people who already make posters like this for big films, and you can buy them. But I want to be able to say, I really like what that YouTuber did, or I really like what that commercial I just saw, or whatever that is, and just be able to chunk it, just throw it into something and have it come out as a series of frames, so that I can a lot of times when I'm trying to think about something, I usually build some kind of vision board where this is a whole bunch of things that I like. You know, like I like this look, and I don't know exactly. Oftentimes I won't know it. I've gotten better at knowing why I like it, but the reason I get better at knowing why I like it is I look at a lot of things that I like. You know, like I really like this look. I really like this thing, and I look at them and I find the similarities between those. And it's easier when you can extract all that information. So anyway, that's what I'm trying to do is what I want is that doesn't exist right now is an app or a plugin for one of the editors that will extract the middle frame of every shot in the film and export it sequentially. That's the goal. And in a perfect world, build a poster for me, you know, of the whole thing. It would be like a little storyboard. Anyway, next question.
Next one's coming in from Matt Cool in Montreal, Quebec. I'm building out a new portable vMix kit that will travel in a rack with a router, mixer, wireless mics, etc. Any suggestions for a really good rack-mountable PC case?
I do have.
How much do you want to spend? That's the real kicker here.
Yeah, we bought some. The one thing I would say is that, you know, generally we go with more U's so that we can get quieter fans. You know, like, so as you compress the PC down, you end up with smaller fans that tend to make a lot more noise. So a lot of the ones that we use that we take on set will be 4 to 5 U so that we have bigger fans that make less noise. Jeffrey?
So last year, before the pandemic started, I actually started building one more for airline travel. So it had to be fairly small, a 2U case. And there is, I think it's SKB has come out. It's a DJ case where the top pops off and there's a 2U rack. You have to do some modding to actually put a PC and all the components in there. And of course, airflow. It can be done, but if you want something bigger than that, yeah, you definitely want to have more spaces so you can get some good airflow and of course other products in there like monitors. But the one I built had the PC and of course a laptop that pulled out as a secondary and a couple of other items. It's very doable.
And how was the sound on those?
Sound came external
noise?
mixer and.
But how was the noise?
Noise. Oh, the noise. The device always went underneath the desk. There was some fan noise, but no different. I try not to use laptops. I always try and get on a desktop because I've always found that laptops and streaming just don't mix that well. At least not up until last year. So if underneath a desk, it's no different than having a desktop computer.
Well, and that's usually our well, I mean, for us, I guess I didn't find I had ones that were acceptable inside of the same room that I'm streaming on less than 5U. You know, like, you know, and I can get it quieter at 4U, but it's just the size of the fans means the air with the airflow and everything else. I had a hard time getting to a point where I couldn't hear it, and that's usually when I'm in the room. I want to not be able to hear it at all. You know, like the Z800s. With 5U,
with the 4U, you can put water cooling into it. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Courtney and then Jan.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether he's looking for the case or for a PC case. Let's see. There's this company that makes these SOS sound on sound, and they make a number of rack mount PC cases for rack mounting PCs. So you might take a look there. Sound on sound.
Yeah, go ahead, Jan.
He said he wanted to go portable. There's a company in Los Angeles called Janal, JAN-AL. They make custom cases for the movie industry. I'm sure they'll have something, and they will give you guidance on what to do if you want to build your own case.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I think previously the brand Rosewell was mentioned on the show. But if you want to get a bare bones system, essentially a case with a motherboard, you might want to look at Supermicro.
JJ, and then we'll move on.
With COVID, everything downsizing and physical places disappearing, there's been a lot of wholesaling of equipment. So find your local wholesaler and you can make your own real easily.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Jason Beisch. This just in, WWDC will be June 7 through 11 this year. Any features the panel hopes to see from Apple this year?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I just want a new MacBook Pro.
See, I was trying not to get into hardware because we all want
I know
hardware.
you said features. You said features, but I'm done.
Charles.
aside from the MacBook Pro that I really need, I would like them to work on their color profiles on Mac OS. Just as a referencing, going from a true professional monitor to what you see on your Mac screen, that shift is always an issue.
Yeah, along those lines, I would love to see any desktop display that doesn't cost $5,000. I'd say would be, you know, a reasonable ask.
Jen?
I'd love to see them come out with a new remote control for Apple TV. That's what I'd like to see them announce.
The funny thing is that I get frustrated that all I want to use is the top piece now. I used to complain about it, but all I want to use is that. Like, I'm like, why do I have to use anything other than that? And so, like, all the other buttons, what frustrates me is that at the beginning, everyone just did that. All the programs just used the top piece. And the other ones, you were like, I don't even know why these buttons are here. And then I guess Apple gave them more guidance on how to use those. And so now everyone's now using the buttons down below. And now I'm just like, I don't understand why this isn't going where I want it to go. And my son's always like, you got to use the bottom button. And I'm
My
like,
problem is I always pick it up upside down and then nothing goes right.
All right. Next question.
Next one's coming in again from Ruben in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I had a plan to get 2 Raspberry Pis, one for video and one for streaming, working on the streaming coding. My wife noticed the volume of packages increase, and now can I use the Raspberry Pi by swapping the memory card to do both? And he has a note that he's not a programmer. He just follows instructions very carefully. He has big hands, and small iPhone keyboard don't mix.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So in putting some thought into this, with Raspberry Pi, first of all, the Raspberry Pis would have to match. They'd have to be the exact same model and amount, but they also have hardware codes in them. So when you put your Linux distribution in there, it does a setup and it does figure out the hardware information through a code, because there are some programs that will rely on that. If you take that card out and put it into another Raspberry Pi, there is a possibility that could get confused, that it's not in the hardware that it's thinking of.
Well, I think the
that's
question
the only
is
thing I
that
could think.
I think actually the question is the other way around, where he wants to use one Raspberry Pi and 2 memory cards, which like, and just set up the Raspberry Pi once with one, set it up again with the other, and swap it. And I think that should actually work. Because the same piece of hardware.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I think that's where the cost is that part. So yeah, I think it should work just fine. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Jan Landy in Las Vegas. What is the best way to remove room sound when using a lav or shotgun mic other than not using one?
Because you knew that was going to come. You knew that was coming next. I was like, don't use that. Mickey and then Jason.
Best way, treat the room.
Yeah, so we're giving you all the so I will say, as a plugin, the one that has been the most successful for me is Synaptic. Has been the one that their echo removal has been. I have been more successful with it than the Isotrope. Maybe I just don't know the Isotrope as well, but I have both of those, and I've used the Synaptic. Has been more successfully. Unveil has been more successful at removing echo than any other plugin that I've used. I don't remember how much it was. It's pretty expensive just to have that for that one plugin, or at least it was when I bought it. I think I was like 800. I think it was like $800 when I bought it. Maybe it's gone down or up or whatever. But
Unveil's 300 or 400 US.
It's gone down then, because it was more than that when I bought it. It was painful. Jason.
I've had great luck with the Advanced RX, but specifically with respect to lavs and shotguns, monitor while you're recording. Don't be afraid to like check your gain as you're doing it, and some good noise canceling headphones that are going to let you hear it while you're doing it will make all the difference. That and some good placement.
Right, Courtney.
Those plugins you mentioned, are those real time, so they could be used in streaming, or would they be causing?
I don't think so. Mickey.
They're designed for post-production, so they're expecting a buffer. So if you use it live, you will experience a latency with it. Minimal.
Yep. Jen?
I just got mental block on the app that where everybody's using. Roboamoeba makes it.
Roboamoeba, yeah. Not loopback, but audio hijack.
Audio hijack, right.
Suddenly all of us blanked. We were all like, what was that?
Sorry about that. That's what happens when you get old. Isn't there some plugins that you could use for that? Maybe a Waves plugin or something like that? In other words, if I'm going to be traveling.
Not natively, no.
I mean, there is, you will, both noise assist and Cedar will remove some echo as part of what they're doing. You know, the noise reduction in noise assist, as well as, I know that the Cedar box actually does a pretty good job of it, but you know, stereo Cedar is like $4,000. Mickey?
Yeah, upwards expander, like what Marty was mentioning earlier, will help a little bit, but not so much with earlier reflections. It will help with like larger room reverb, but not the smaller room sounds.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Ray Harris in Houston, Texas. Has anyone used a mic under a mask? A friend has asked me about this for his church choir. Any suggestions for a good, inexpensive mic to do this, and any best practice suggestions?
Jason?
Under a mask? No, I've never done it, but I immediately think you shouldn't do it. I think what you should do is, you know, place carefully and EQ. Clearly hands are going up, so someone disagrees with me.
Go, Jeff.
Can you ask this question in 2 weeks? Because I'm going to be experimenting with this over the next 2 weeks. We're going to.
Are you using the duck
We have
bills?
an opera. Pardon?
Are you using the duck bills? Have you seen the
No,
duck bills?
just I've seen the duck bills. Singers don't like them.
Because they
Gee,
look
I
funny.
wonder why.
We're doing an outdoor opera production, and so everyone will be on wireless. So typically we do it as a hair mic, you know, Countryman B3 in the hairline. But I'm going to experiment with outside the mask and inside the mask. But I'm worried about facial noise rubbing on the mask.
Right. Courtney and then Marty, real quick, and then we're going to move on.
I don't know how quick, but I did some experimentation using this type of mask and taking a pile microphone, and let me see if I can get it right. This has 2 filters. It has one on the outside and one on the inside. And so the pile, I just cut a little slot right here and put the pile capsule right here, and then you put this cover back on. So it's between 2 HEPA filters, so it prevents any popping and breath noise from
How'd it
reaching
sound?
It sounded pretty good. Of course, it sounds like it's in a little bit of an enclosed situation, so it's not like an open mic, but it's better than about an. You know, if you just put it inside a cloth mask, you know, you're going to hear the breath.
What did you model that in?
I downloaded this model. It was available online. From Keck Medical Laboratories. It's an open source model, and it's printed in urethane.
Oh, nice. Go ahead, Marty, real quick, and then we'll move on.
So a bunch of people who who were sewing costumes and such for Broadway got together at the beginning of COVID and created something called the Broadway Relief Project, and they developed a mask specifically for singers and actors.
That's what we were calling the duck bill, because it looks like a big duck bill.
When
you wear it. So that's what we were calling. I have one. It's over there somewhere, but I'll see if I can find it. Go to the next question. I'll see if I can find it. I think it was sitting over there.
I put the link in Mukana.
Yeah, go ahead, Guy. Throw out the next question and just pass it around. I'll see if I can find it.
We'll go long on this one. Ronnie Hofsoy, Tromso Norway, asks, how do you prepare a Mac for live production regarding display background, sleep, system audio, performance, and what more? Is there a checklist? Same goes for Windows.
All right,
Jason.
I'll kick this off. I'm going to have to read these because it's a long list. Display backgrounds. So first things first, whether it's Mac or Windows, but image the hard drive, back it up, nuke it. Clean load always. Clean load, do your upgrade, do your updates. And then after that, let's see, display backgrounds. I tend to use solid colors unless for some reason I'm using a desktop as playout. Sleep is always off. System audio is always locked to whatever it needs to be locked to, and I tend to disable anything that's not going to be used. And then it's really just a matter of the apps that you need, being customized. As far as Windows, you would not believe how much goes into stripping Windows 10 for production, but it's a fair bit. I've got it down to a series of scripts, but it's no small feat.
So this is the duck bill. So it gives you
face diaper.
Yeah, it actually it feels much more comfortable to wear. It just looks funny. So you have to kind of like decide whether it becomes that kind of process. But it's got some reinforcement across the inside here, and I I went through a process of trying to figure out if I can put a mic in there, and you can. And it definitely sounds better than putting under a mic that's so close, but you still get a lot of breath. Is the problem there? Go ahead, Jeff.
How does that feel on your face? Do you feel the complaint I've heard
better.
from singers?
Much
is
better.
That
this is super comfortable compared to other ones because you have so much space in front of you. So,
but does it restrict your jaw opening? That's the complaint I've heard. Because especially, opera singers are.
Yeah, it would definitely restrict your jaw because it's not stretchy.
Yeah, that's the complaint they have. They can't open their mouth the way they're used to doing to make certain vowel sounds.
Yeah, for this, I was getting just so I could put comms underneath it when we were all packed together. And then what happened was we separated our control room into multiple rooms. So you didn't have to. You just go into your room and take off your mask. And so it kind of died away because of that. Let's go to the next question. We're running out of time.
Next one's coming in from JJ McKenna. As our first office hours community kitchen recipe, would stone soup be a viable option? Note, most of my breads are sourdough, slowly fermenting for a couple days.
I don't. We'll think through it. I don't. Maybe. I have to think about it a little bit about what we could do. It'll be something simple. And if we do bread, it'll be something really fast. Maybe something that doesn't take very much time. So like my flour tortillas can be made in real time. So that type of thing could be easy. Next question.
Next one comes in from Nick Logue of Boston. Using vMix desktop capture into vMix, I'm getting some audio noise, slight clicks and pops. The network bandwidth is around 50% full and the computer running vMix is operating within appropriate percentages. Any idea how I might clean it up?
Go ahead, Guy.
I'll answer my question I just read. You'll want to go to the lowest common denominator, which is 16-bit 48 kilohertz, and that, along with the DVD setting for the sound control panel, is what can cure that. So lowest common, don't go high up to 96 and get crazy. Just drop down to 16-bit 48, and that will clear that up.
Next question.
Next one's coming again from Ronnie in Norway, trying to use Waves WLM as a VST effect plugin on a Davinci Resolve 17 studio timeline on a Mac M1, and it crashes. Is this as expected, or is there another workflow of using WLM in Davinci?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Waves plugins aren't officially supported on Apple Silicon as of yet.
Next question.
Next one's from JJ McKenna. Similar to the aural mapping of the Hagia Sophia, what software could a recording technician use to find the resonant sweet spot in a room to place a pair of microphones for optimal recording?
Go ahead, Jason.
I think it's Hagia Sophia, and popping balloons, I think, is the right way to at least get a sense of the room.
Of the whole room. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff, and then Mickey.
Your ears. Best software you have.
Go ahead. We call that wetware. Anyway, Mickey.
Exactly what Jeff said. Play music from where it's going to be played and walk around. Have a listen.
I do think that it would be interesting to do. I've never thought of doing impulses in different places in a building just as a measurement tool. I do want to see if we can bring on for a Tuesday the guys that did a lot of the cathedral work that were on NPR. If someone can find me that episode, it's somewhere. I'm just going to ask. I'm going to crowdsource that. I just haven't had time to dig through NPR to find someone just Discord me the episode that had the guy. There was an episode where they talked about how the monks, when the reverberance was designed, all the chanting was designed for the cathedral that they were in, and it will never sound the same somewhere else. And they started figuring out a way to actually measure the impulse of cathedrals that they were in, and then reapply that back to dry singing, and then put it back in to have you actually be able to experience that. Next question.
Next one comes in from our own Jeff Francis. In ATEM software control, is there a way to return audio controls to their default? Something like option click the fader to reset to 0 dB.
Maybe this is just a habit of mine from working in DAWs, but I'd like to be able to, click the pan to go back to center, click the fader to go back to unity.
I don't.
Mickey's shaking his head.
Yeah, with the ATEM stuff, I've had to click on the number, type 0, hit enter. No, like one click reset.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from James Babbitt in San Diego. What apps are you using to download podcasts? Does the app save the files using the name of the podcast instead of a code like Apple Podcasts?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I use an app called Castbox. It's great. And it seems to be the best search engine for podcasts. If you're looking for something, they've got a really great way to find podcasts. And it's cross-platform. It works on Android and iOS.
Jason?
Overcast for me. I never went back.
Yeah, Overcast is by far the most popular podcast solution is as far as finding, collecting, listening. Next question.
Next one comes in from Bill Hops in San Jose. Has anyone had experience with the Kiloview N2 wireless HDMI to NDI encoder, looking for a low-cost wireless solution to bring a camera into production? Other recommendations?
All of us are searching. Go ahead, Guy.
I'd avoid it if you can, because that's going to be NDI HX. It's going to be pretty lossy. I'd jump over to a Teardeck Bolt or one of the Hollylands or something along those lines. Even the Hollyland's pretty cheap, under $300, and it's a nice, fast, low latency. And then I would kick it over to NDI from the receiver side of that transmitter.
So this one, you plug an HDMI in, and it just then jumps onto a Wi-Fi network and produces a NDI. It's interesting.
Yeah, they're called the Spark from NewTek, and we've had not good luck with the NewTek version. And this might be, I think Kiloview this is a newer one, but still, I don't trust them. So I would still recommend the old school solution, which is hop it via reliable, something that works all the time, which is something like Teardeck.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Jason Brown in Philadelphia. Greetings. Is there a complete list of what office hours topics were covered that I can reference or search if I missed numerous sessions?
There's so many things. There's so many things that and I guess what I would say is that number one is we are working on it, having the infrastructure be able to support a way for you to search it. Right now, you can search YouTube. Jeff.
So one of the attendees started doing this and put a blog that goes from May of last year to September of last year that pulls the YouTube question links out. So I put that in the post or in the Mukana.
But yeah,
it only goes through September.
And the main thing is that you, if you have questions, bring them to us. And I'm a firm believer that when you're really ready for the question when you have the question is when you're really ready for the answer. So, you're definitely going to be able to absorb stuff, but what I would do is be more just as aggressive as you can about asking questions that you're curious about. I mean, really, that's what we're like. It doesn't have to be something that you absolutely have to fix, but just things you're curious about related to this. That's what we get every day. We just want to, when you're thinking about something, the best thing to do is to have somewhere that you can write it down, whether it's the notes in Apple Notes or a text file on your PC, or even there's a notes section in Mukana that is personal to you in your profile. Just to remind you that Chris put it there. So if you go to your profile, you'll see a place for you to there'll be a little notes tab. And so if during the day you have a question that you want to ask, you can put it up there. Just put a little list there, and then you can copy and paste it in the next day. So just know that kind of thing is available all the time to kind of keep track of things that might pop up during the day. I don't really understand why that is that way. It doesn't, that's what we're looking for, is for you to just go, I don't understand. I just don't know what the specifics about that, or I'm curious about that. That's usually a good sign for you to write it down somewhere and then bring it in. We'll talk about it. All right. So now we're shifting gears, and we're going to talk about comms again. Comms, as I believe that comms are oftentimes more than half the show. So that's why we keep on coming back to it, to really dig into it. So if you have questions about comms, specifically as they relate to, we'll answer any questions about comms, but specifically as we relate to some of the basic designs as well as the etiquette. So one of the problems that we haven't really addressed, we've addressed it here and there, but just how do you operate on comms? So if you're a user there's a lot of things that are pretty common. That are the easiest ones is just make sure to latch your mic shut. That you can always tell that somebody is new on comms is because they leave their mic open all the time, and everyone will do it some of the time. But one of the big things is, to latch it shut. But the other thing is that there are, just how you talk to folks, and how you interact with folks over comms is pretty important. Are there anything, are there any things that are the pet peeves for those of us who've done a lot of this? Is there anything that you have pet peeves of people who jump on comms and are a certain way? Go ahead, Jeff.
I think Doug and I are probably right on the same page. Jumping on and swallowing the mic so that it's like right in your mouth and just overloaded, being louder because they don't understand how to adjust null or don't understand how to adjust their headphone volume so that they're appropriate.
And one of the things I would say is that one of the things we try to do before the show is have us really talk through it, talk over the comms back and forth, and have our engineer, typically Brian or someone else, tuning everybody's mics, before we, like trying to tune everybody's volumes in the back end. Now that's usually on a clear comm system of tightening up everybody and how they sound so that we're all kind of like the mic checks. We're all kind of in the same area. One of the problems you get into is that you have different, a lot of different headsets and different mics that are there. I have a pet peeve of people who put their mic right in front of their mouth, and I get lots of breath. Like breath on a comms. And I know that we're now picking at things, but these are the kind of things that we've gotten to the point where we're pushing our audio and our video pretty far. As we keep on building these productions, we want to get to a point where we have a nice, clean, environment, as we work through it. But so for me, I always have my mic the same way I would have a headset mic. I always want my comms mic, and you'll see me play with it. I'll bend it around and everything else, so it sits right on my corner, right on the corner of my mouth, so that I'm not getting breath. It's off to the side, but it is as close to my mouth as it can be without going in front of it. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, one pet peeve that I have is knowing when to talk and when to shut up. Sometimes there's 4 conversations going on at the same time, and knowing when to jump in and when not to. And that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves is getting out of the way of really what needs to be happening, because some things are more important than others. And every once in a while, I just like to turn off all the camera ops. Like, you can't talk.
Well, to widen that is using comms for small talk is something that is if you're on one of my shows, just know that using comms for small talk is a big no-no. like do it often. And, and the problem is it's really during a show, someone won't necessarily tell you that. Like, you'll be talking about something that isn't sports. In Vegas, camera ops are just notorious for talking about basketball, and for whatever reason, it just, every time we're there, it's like, wow, I know someone could talk for 2 hours about basketball on the comms, and I hate it. Like I just hate the comms being filled up with stuff that isn't related to the show, because I think it causes mistakes, and it's not being focused on what people are doing. So in general, I warn people to not, you'll hear me come on and say something like, keep it tight. That is keep it tight is a nice way of saying stop talking about whatever you were talking about on comms. And rather than taking it directly, that's usually how I kind of communicate to everyone not to do that anymore. Go ahead, Mickey.
A pet peeve is when some people start speaking before they key, or they speak right as they key, and you miss the first 2-3 words or 2-3 syllables.
Yeah, and that's oftentimes an issue with radios, because the radio you'll push in for push to talk, and you get this. There's about a half a second delay, and so you have to sit there, and you'll see someone who really knows it, because they'll hold it for a second and then they'll start talking, and that's because they know that they're waiting for that. It took me when I first started. It took me a long time to understand that why they were. Why were they holding it for a second and then starting to talk as opposed to just talking? Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, exactly why, because I don't get to use much like PL or comm systems, but on film sets it's mostly old school UHF or VHF radios.
Yeah, Craig.
Yeah, I have to double down on the chatter, but also people who don't know when there's multiple channels involved and they don't have everything, and they start a conversation with somebody on the wrong channel and everybody's listening to it, it just destroys. Like if you've got a private channel, if you don't realize you're not on it, that's always a big thing. Another one that always bugs me is people who put their headsets down when the mic's still on. Just kills everybody.
Oh my gosh, this is just the worst. Nigel?
Yeah, as a client, I can tell you that if you hear people chatting about stuff outside the event, particularly the people working the cameras and stuff, it's very strange, and people should be very careful what they say because it leaks out to the client very often.
I was just about to bring that up. So it's good. It's a really good point, is that you should always assume the client is listening. It is really common for production crews to become, there's always things that could have gone better. It could have been planned better, could have been whatever, or sometimes the event that you're working on is not a football game, and can be a little dry. Cutting on the show over comms is a great way to not get invited back, and definitely cutting on the client is a great way to not get invited back. And sometimes it's grounds for you to leave right then. So you just need to be super careful, and you should always just assume the client is listening during when you're doing it. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, the other thing, just to follow on with that, is a lot of the shows I work on, we have open biscuits, and you always have to think anybody could hear everything you say. If there's an open speaker somewhere with comms, you really got to be on your game.
Right. And it's why I wanted to bring it up. And I know that I don't know if we'll go a whole second hour on this, but I wanted to bring it up because it's so important. There are so many things that people cut themselves off at the knees in production. They're very technically good. They work hard, and then they do things that just they're not conscious to the fact that it is affecting their employment by being who they are on comms, like it is actually. And because no one will tell you, like, sometimes we've had a couple of these conversations. This is the stuff that no one tells you in production, because they don't want to have, a lot of times in production, you don't want to create a scene before, after, during, whatever. And you don't have to. See, the thing with production is that we build these teams from freelancers every single show. We don't have to teach you. We don't have to train you on how to do things. We just hire somebody else the next time. So there's no firing, there's no whatever, there's no, so a lot of times if you're a freelancer working in these areas, you just don't, the shows kept on going on and you weren't part of them, and something went wrong, because as a producer, you hang on to everybody that you just keep on hiring the people that it works with, and you stop hiring the ones that it doesn't work with. And in general, personal chatter, the things that we keep out of here are good examples of, religion and politics over comms, but pretty much any time on set is something you don't want to talk about. Like just ever. Doesn't matter whether you think the crew is liberal or conservative or whatever. Just don't ever bring those up. Those are the two things never to bring up on comms, never to bring up on a set, never bring up, you just don't talk about those things because it's too hot. Obviously inappropriate behavior related to a variety of other things. Inclusiveness are the things that you want to keep out of everywhere. Just not have that. That's completely inappropriate. But those are things. And then another one of my a pet peeve. I know we're going to pet peeves, but I think it's easiest for us to talk about when we talk about comms is just people getting on comms and not knowing what they're going to say. So there's this, they get on so yeah, they're like so
yeah, where am
so
I
was
again?
wondering, well, and so I was wondering if we could move the light downstage. Was it downstage? Is it stage right or what? Or camera right? I don't know. I mean, but if you can move it over just a little bit.
Ouch. Ouch.
So anyway, so that's the when you get on, remember that, again, I think people aren't conscious to, you're talking to 100 people, or you're talking to 30 people, or you're talking to whatever, and you present yourself a certain way when you do that. Pull yourself up, think about what you want to say, pull it together and say it. But trying to figure it out while you're talking, unless you're really good at that, is a bad idea. Go ahead, Jeff.
The other side of that is the guy that won't get to the point.
Right,
And it
right,
happens on the radios more so, I think, than just regular comms, but definitely happens on comms too. And it just goes on and on and on, and just gives you the whole backstory of why the Titanic sunk, and then why the global warming's happening, and then he finally gets to the point and goes, "Can we turn off this mic?"
Yeah, exactly. And you want to constantly be conscious in comms of keeping the channels clear. What you need to use the comms to make sure you get things done, but you're leaving them open for everyone else as well, even if you have private. Now, I will say things can get a little looser in private, private point-to-points if you have access to those. But on PLs, you want to think about that as a 4-lane highway and get in, get out quickly. Nigel, and then Maggie, and then Courtney.
In Army communications, there's Roger and Wilco. Roger being "I've heard you," Wilco saying "I will do," and it's important to understand the difference between the two on the system. Which
is funny. So in the comms that we work in, a lot of times copy is that I heard you. Roger is that I will do it. So this is where you get into, you have to know which one is which sometimes. But yeah, so in the US, I don't hear Wilco very often. Like Wilco is not a common. I do hear it in Europe and in the UK. In the United States, it's usually copy and Roger. And this gets deeper into nomenclature, and it's important to understand what the nomenclature is. At one point, we would put out we actually put out a little sheet, but then we just stopped making them. But anyway, go Maggie.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tucker and I were talking about some of this yesterday because I'm writing an article about comms right now. And we were talking about not talking back on public channels. So, for example, I did an event a couple weekends ago and I just wanted them to get rid of the lights. And we had like a 15-minute conversation about why I wanted them to get rid of the lights. And it was like totally unnecessary, blocked all the channels for a while. It was pretty pointless. The second thing I was going to say is I come from a theater background and so do most of my team. And so saying the word go on comms is like the worst thing you could possibly do. And we find like a lot of people who don't have theater backgrounds often will say, "Oh, when you say go," and then everybody's like, what? So we often tell people if they need to say it and it's on an actual cue to say GO instead of actually saying go.
Which is funny because the problem is that in general comms, you'll say, someone will say, Mickey for Alex, and I'll say go for Alex. That's a kind of more of a, that's super common, but definitely no one uses the word go when the show starts. Like when we're in rehearsal, like everyone stops saying go for, those things. Courtney?
Well, on film sets, we're using walkie-talkies mainly. Go to 2, go to 3. That's the way you move people from the main production channel to the private line channels. And that was one thing I was going to point out is know your silos. Know which channel is lighting, which channel is camera, which channel is ADs and production, and stay off them unless you have pertinent stuff for that particular channel. And if you do have something that everyone should hear, you need to request to say it on the production channel.
Well, and one of the things that, for instance, Unity makes really easy, which is a little dangerous, is that you can just open up all the channels you want to talk on and then do push to talk. And that is super annoying. Like it is like talking on all the channels to talk to everybody on Unity is a super good way to make everybody upset because you're cutting off everybody every time. You got to figure out who you want to talk to and then push to talk and talk to them. Doug?
Yeah, another pet peeve is not using the comms when you should use them. Like, so people in the truck that are talking to, when they want to talk to me and they talk to me just in their voice, like I am not paying.
I know exactly who he's talking about, and I'm not going to throw her under the bus, but I know what happens.
I'm not paying attention to, like this year, I'm paying attention to my comm ear, and like I will turn over and like, please use your comm, even though you're sitting 2 people from me. Like that is so annoying. Like, so because everybody needs to hear it sometimes.
What I view that as, usually as someone who usually sets the comms up, is if someone's using some piece of way to communicate other than the comms, there's something wrong with my architecture or the way I'm communicating to them, that something isn't working for them. And now sometimes it's just a personal problem, but oftentimes there is that isn't smooth. There's something not smooth about the way the comms are working for them. And so I'll oftentimes send whoever's doing comms coordination over to figure out what's wrong. Like, is their volume off, or do they not have, and the problem again with Unity is that it's brutally limited on the PLs. Like, just, like, I'm hoping that someday they'll fix it. I mean, we use it. We're using it for more and more shows, but when you come from a ClearComm or Real background, the fact that you only get 6 PLs per page is like a toy. Like, and so the thing is it's like, and so that you have to change pages to go to something else is just really frustrating. And so that's but usually, like, for instance, point-to-points make a big difference in comm design, because it takes so much of the traffic out of the system. When you have everybody have the ability to go direct to people. So when I say point-to-points, these are in a comm system. When you get an inexpensive comm system or a walkie-talkie, I mean, kind of everything's shared. But when you get into a refined comm system and Unity will do this, and a lot of other ones will, you can set up all the point-to-points so everyone can talk to each other directly. And that's where, you can get rid of a lot of the traffic, because unless you have to do an announce to everyone, you can talk to just the person that you need to, and that makes things a lot smoother to make it work. Go ahead, Jeff.
Same thread as Doug, and I laugh because I know how frustrated he gets with his person in the trailer that does that. Same thread though is on site. We have a comm system that works anywhere on the planet, literally, because we're on something that's either on Wi-Fi or on cellular, and they use a cell phone to call me while I'm on the comm system. It's like, just stop, just use the comms. That's what it's there for.
And one of the things is what I usually respond to is what part of the comms isn't working for you, because I'm not going to listen to you call me. Like, like in a production, I'm not going to, this isn't going to happen. Like, I'm not going to pick up the phone. I'm notorious for not picking up the phone. Like so I don't, like, especially during production, you have to, when I'm in a production, unless it's my wife or my mom, I'm not going to pick up the phone. Like, ever. And so
the person I'm talking about actually happens to be my wife.
Oh, okay. There we go. So anyway, but that's it. And outside of that, I won't pick up the phone during a production. Like, I'm in comms, and everybody I need to talk to should be available there. Go ahead, Marty.
So the specific language that you're talking about using, the abbreviated language, comes from ham radio and military radio, because remember that even though you may have multiple channels, there are multiple conversations going on within your channel, and so it's a way to keep those conversations brief and to the point, and to identify who you're talking to and who you're listening to. And remember, even during lunch, somebody is listening.
Right. And the other thing is that there's a couple things that our current society makes hard, is that down notes at the end of what you're saying are super important if you're not going to say over. So, like, over is like a little bit too much typically. So if I say, Marty, we need to blah, 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 over. In military terms, you would do something like that. We tend not to do that in comms. I mean, it sounds a little too, it's like a little too formal, for a comms or walkie. For the most part, we have some crews that it works well with. But what is important is that when I say, Marty, I need you to get rid of that mic, I come down. I know this will sound like a really minor thing, but I come down really hard at the end of my sentence. That is my way of saying over. And the problem we get into now with the kids these days is, Marty, I need you to get rid of that mic, and that's not telling me that I'm done, like I'm, and that's not that's not saying over in the same way. So you do want to think about
question.
That, like a question, rather than what you want to do. And so you want to think about that, when you're, like, again, the reason we're having this conversation is not because this is the way all comms work. It's that we want to elevate the art of comms. And that's why we're going to keep on coming back to this, like, once a month. We want to elevate the art of comms, so that when we as a group do these things, what's going to happen is you're going to start seeing this happen for Mad in the Kitchen, and we're going to do more and more of these where we're doing productions and all the comms are exposed to everybody listening. And so one of the reasons I'm talking about this is that, we're going to, So all your comms, if you're joining the club to play with Matt in the kitchen, are going to be exposed to office hours, watching it on, and they're all going to be talking about it and listening to you. And what we want to do, we won't hit a home run every single time, but what we want to do is get to a point where it's really a work of art that you're listening to of people using comms, and so we're going to talk about these things, and we'll break it down later about that piece, is to create, like, we're really the best in the world we're getting to the point where we're the best in the world at doing Zoom. Like, we do Zoom better than anybody else. But we want to get to the point for comms, because they are so important to our production, that we're really kind of like, when you listen to what we do in our teams, it sounds better than anyone in the world. Go ahead, Mickey.
Just curious, in terms of etiquette, I've been part of a bunch of crews wherein the standard is, if it's a short message, it is repeated twice. What do people think about that?
So there's definitely, if it's for me, you'll hear me do it on things that are important. So it's not usually a short message, but it's things that are important. So you'll hear, like, at 5 minutes out, you'll hear something that goes 5 minutes out, record, and that's like that says that's it. When I'm repeating it, it usually means something is important, and it's usually an important cue that's coming. I don't usually repeat smaller things just because they're smaller, but because they are something that everyone needs to hear. You'll have things like going live, but things that I need everyone to, if they didn't hear it the first time, you want to hear it the second time. Marty?
Yeah, the original purpose of that was because over-the-air communications was unreliable, and so it was important to say it twice to make sure that it was heard. There might have been a dropout in the first one, but in current, for comms, you want to make sure that people are listening, and sometimes somebody may be concentrating on something and they'll hear something in their ears that says, "Oh, I need to pay attention to that. What was that?" And then having it repeated, if it's a really important communications, helps.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Courtney?
I'd like to poll the panel here and find out how many production sound mixers who are monitoring, who are not in a booth, are on set with monitoring on headphones, use comms at all or not at all. That's hand raised if you use them, or if you don't use them. Hand raised if you use them. I find that interesting, because I always shun. I'll let my assistant, A2 or something, notify me if they hear something on the comms, but I'm listening so critically on the headphones that any kind of distraction coming in is like, I don't know, was that somebody's wireless mic rubbing, or did somebody key their microphone? I don't know. It's hard to separate the two.
Yeah, Mickey, and then Marty, and then Craig.
Yeah, for me on narratives, comms out. I don't need to hear that. But on ENG type shoots, run and gun shoots, I always have my walkie, typically a Motorola, fed into my mixer, so I can monitor it through my in-ears.
Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
I'd be very selective about what I'm listening to, but sometimes the challenge is, how do I listen to it if I'm wearing headphones? Like if I'm mixing out in the field, right?
Well,
so I have to find a way, an interface, to get the comms into my mixer and then solo that into my headphones so that I can hear it. And I'll often have it just on one side, because my A2 may need to contact me or something else, or the producer may have something audio he wants to tell me.
I will say that we usually have a channel for audio, and it's really selective. Like, we do not want people talking on that channel, because we're sensitive to it. But we do generally want to do that, because I got to be able to send cues or talk back and forth to the audio engineer. Craig?
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. In theater, we've always got, or typically always have, a 2-channel comm at the front of house console. One's the SM channel, one's a private sound with a handset rather than a headset. And then also, so you only need to pick it up if you need to actually talk to somebody. And often a walkie-talkie as well, turned really low, but just enough that you can hear it chirp, so you know that if you don't see a cue light, you can see that. And we've also usually got a text-based system, usually attached to the RF wireless mic monitoring system.
Yeah, Jeff, and then Doug.
Dante solves all those problems by going with the Dante and a good headset belt pack, or a proper comm system that could bring in multiple program channels too.
And that's one of the ways that we're solving some of this, with the BSS 806 that we're putting into our system, is so that we can just route everything to however we need to have it routed internally. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, we have our DSS routed. Our A1 has 2 sets of woolers, so he can route whatever he wants in a specific wooler. So like me being the director, he always has me in the top one, and then he puts whatever he wants in the bottom one. And then, that's on his right side, but in front, he's looking, listening to the program. So he doesn't really use headsets, but he can route, anything to those woolers.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, so how I route it to my sound devices mixers, but I use old school radios. So I have this cable with current blocking so that it doesn't feed voltage back into my 688 or 633. And it's just a mini jack. I also have the same cable with an XLR male.
Chris?
I would love to get a second-hour tour through Mickey's box of cables.
Yeah, me too. Seriously, I thought I had cables.
This guy.
Yeah. One of the other things that it really changed the way we did comms also was really working with, we did a bunch of jobs, well, not a bunch, but a few jobs with NASA. And we just love the way it sounds talking to NASA over comms, because it's always kind of this, mostly a monotone, and we got into the habit of, no matter what was happening, we had one time where the truck caught fire, and the back, smoke coming out of there was smoke coming out of the back of the UPSs, because there was a square wave getting pushed into them from the generator. And so there's smoke bellowing out of the back of the UPSs, and Marty Brennis, who's my engineer on a lot of these things, was, somewhere else, and over the walkie-talkies, you just heard, Marty, we've got smoke coming out of the truck. We've got smoke coming out of the truck. And that was it. And I was like, my crew is great. Like when I heard that, now I had to run over and get the smoke to stop coming out of the truck. But that's what you want to like. So. And talking, I actually had a conversation with someone at NASA, and I think that they were talking. I was talking about the comms, and they said, "Well, when someone's 200 miles from the surface of the Earth, getting them stressed is not going to produce a better result." And that was the kind of the, so they were very conscious to not having the comms add more stress to the situation, because the situation is, in their case, oftentimes lethal, and the only thing you have is comms, you're talking to someone, and I think that it is, you want to keep heart rates low, you want to keep people focused. And I don't think people understand how much comms can ruin a show. Like, it can make a show, but it can ruin a show by people getting panicked and starting to yell over them and wanting something to happen really fast, and wanting those things, and speaking fast and not being clear and all these other things. People don't realize that while the comms are incredibly powerful, with great power comes great responsibility, and that you have to make sure that you understand the energy that you're pushing into your show over those comms. The more powerful they are, and the better that you get at making them, the more power they have. And the more you're likely to derail your entire show. The reason that's why we're having this hour is that you're able to derail your whole show by having someone, throwing Molotov cocktails into the middle of the production. And so those are the things to kind of, think through as you're putting together Nigel, and then Mickey, and then Marty, and then Doug. And then we're going to go to questions.
Yeah, your comms is often a reflection of your culture, and your culture comes from your leadership. So if the leaders behave in the wrong way, the rest of it will fall apart quickly.
Yeah. And we had one client that I felt like we'd gone the right direction. We had one client came over and said, "How things going?" I said, "Yeah, it's all nominal. We're putting things together." And he said, "I'm pretty sure that I would never know whether things were going well or bad when I talk to you." like I don't, everything's just all like, and that's the way I like to be on set, and I like to be in comms, is that there's no up or down. There's just communication. Mickey, and then Marty.
Yeah, well, just going back to what you're mentioning, Alex, that's more especially true when you're speaking to on-air talent. Like the way you talk to them really could affect how they present themselves on air.
Well, and not only that, it's not only how you communicate with them, but what you communicate to them. There'll be things that happen in a show, and someone will say, "Are you going to tell the client that? Or are you going to tell the host that?" And I'm like, "What can they do about it?" Like they'll have something like something isn't working in their background or whatever, but we've gone live, and people will want to tell the host, "Hey, this is whatever." There's no reason to tell them anymore, because there's no reason for them to think about that anymore, because there's nothing we can do about it. We're live, and so beforehand you want to be as, picky as you can possibly be. But once you're live, the only thing you talk to the hosts about are things that they are actionable items that make a difference for them at that moment, and never, anything else. Marty, and then Doug.
Yeah, sometimes in that situation, you need to communicate with the TD, who can switch away to another shot for a moment while something gets fixed, and the client doesn't even, the talent's not even aware of it. Horror stories, there was a very famous sports director who did all of the A games for one of the major networks. And he was a very demanding fellow, but his comms technique was absolutely toxic. This guy would be blowing his mind out over the comms throughout the entire show, and nobody was good enough. Nobody did anything that was worthwhile. He fired people over comms on a rate at least once during every show.
I think I worked for him.
I think that was actually a pretty common thing in sports for a long time. I sat in the back of a lot of trucks in the 90s. And I used to work for Prime Sports Network, so there's lots of, and I'd get to sit in trucks every once in a while, and I was just amazed, because it was just like these people would just be screaming at each other for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and then they get to the end of it and they go, "Hey guys, great work, let's go get a beer." Like it was, and so for someone who's not used to it, I think that the other thing is that the crew got kind of that's just how things are communicated. But I think that it was a culture that I think I feel like most of these gone away. As I sit in trucks today, I don't hear that kind of comms very often in the way that I did in the 90s. People tend to be, they tend to be intense, but they tend not to be as intense as they were before. I think it's a bunch of things, but a higher sensitivity being appropriate in general, I think has cleaned up trucks a fair bit. Doug?
I will share this because I value you guys and we're here to learn. But if you heard me 3 years ago and you heard me now, two different people. We had some growing pains, and things literally were falling off the rails. And I will admit that I would be the first one to not make the culture good, like Nigel said, that but I was wearing 5 hats, and then if I lose it, the show is bad. And so I tell you that I have made a specific point to grow in that, and to Alex's point that the more calm you can be, some stuff is going to happen in production. We all know it, we've all lived it, but it's how you react to it is what you can control. And something will go bad, but what you can do to fix it can help not domino affect the rest of your show.
You're absolutely right. And you're the way you are on comms is going to pull it back. It's going to pull people back into the show, or push them over the edge, and again, what happens is, it's like anything else. When you start yelling at folks, they'll start making mistakes. They'll start when you're suddenly getting when you get stressed, when you're pushing stress into the comm system, people will start making more mistakes, not less mistakes, and so, and again, this is something almost no one talks about, for the most part, other than we complain, and you're just doing it. And that's why I thought it'd be an interesting second hour. Go ahead, Sky.
Doug, will you be my sponsor?
as long as we can reverse it. And happy birthday, John Preto. I didn't get to say it. Happy birthday, brother.
Hey, happy birthday, John.
Wait. No one told us it was John's birthday.
You missed it.
We've been talking about it all morning. Alex.
Where? Where?
You were
off getting your tea or whatever.
You were doing tortillas.
Did you sing, John? Did
Not
you sing
yet.
John?
Oh,
Happy birthday?
no,
Well,
we saved that.
all right. Well, we'll take a little moment here now that we know it's John's birthday. All right. Everyone ready?
1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you,
John.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, John. Happy birthday to you.
And many more.
Huzzah, huzzah, huzzah.
Wow, perfect. Wow, John, you're more pink than normal.
I am.
So I do want to finish with Doug. And I do want to
ahead.
finish with Doug
Go ahead,
because I'm very serious that, again, Alex, that you are guiding and bringing your experience to this journey that we are all on, and that the Mat in the Kitchen thing is. I heard you when you talked about if you're at 80% of capacity and you go to 90, you're in trouble. And I've popped a couple of times this past year, of which I'm not proud. It's not me. And my wife says, that's not you. And that reflected that. So this is great. Thank you, Doug. I will be reciprocating your sponsorship, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Jan and then Maggie.
On behalf of all of the office hours, John, I would like to invite you out to a free lunch. I will buy you lunch on behalf of
we're going to
everybody
my place for a barbecue, Jan. You can come on over at 11 o'clock.
at night or in the morning.
Morning, right after office hours.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. I expect pictures. Maggie.
I'm so jealous. We're still in lockdown. I want to come for a barbecue. Anyway, what I was going to say is on the virtual event side, the major difference with comms now is that like our client didn't used to be on. And if they were, it was like 1 or 2 people. And now like we did an event a couple of weeks ago where like I'm managing an entire client team on comms who aren't used to being on comms. And, you know, a lot of these pet peeves that we talk about where we can sometimes talk about them or not bring back the freelancer next time when it's your client, it's like a totally different ball game of having to be very patient and explaining how things work and designating channels so that it doesn't kind of hit other pieces, but it is a different kind of comms dynamic when you're working remote with so much of the client on comms.
And this goes back into comms design. One of the things that that we do is I don't like overbuilding people's comms panels for the production. I like to train the production people to hit the right buttons and not take things away from them too much, because it's just they get caught up in a production need that they can't get to, and then you have to have the designer go back and put buttons back in. But with clients, I give them like a channel or 2. You know, like it's very they only hear a couple things, and they're kind of in that world because you know, it's just, and it's mostly so that they don't get into the weeds and get panicked or other things and push things over the edge. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Go ahead, Chris, and then Mickey.
Yeah, what we've done is we have same thing. We build it out. Tucker helps us build it out, and Doug also. We'll have a client channel, but then we also have like this is where the real deal is happening. And I may recommend somebody develop a product that's like 2 hours of completely generic, very calm chatter that you can just play on that production channel.
You want comms music?
Yeah, so it always sounds like the crew is working on something. It's completely innocuous. It doesn't mean anything, but they'll go, wow, those guys were they were working really hard.
I think NASA probably is on top of that, and it's probably even open source.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Right, royalty. We should start a royalty-free like comms website. But yeah, going back to
we should have actors that do it live all the time.
Yes.
The funny thing is that it could be a service where you have a handful
XM
of people doing
Radio
it.
Channel 9000.
But you send them a little video of your set so that it actually
This
looks
is our
like it's
exit
the crew.
strategy. This is how we're all going to retire.
We had the best pre-show we ever did was for a show. I won't talk about which one, but it was a big show. Relatively big show. And what we did is we persuaded them to let us do it. And what we did, we actually mocked it up. So we couldn't use the real comms, but we did I think it was 10 or 12 minutes of comms that we recorded and planned out and did all the thing and played it all back into the stream. But it was coordinated with a couple little cues on the stage. So we were like, we had like someone who looked like I think it was an actual PA, but we cued him and he went out there and over the comms to sell the live nature of it. Because what we made it look like is we accidentally left a wide camera on. So the camera came on and it was just showing over the stage. And so you see all these chat, like they left the camera on, and you could hear the comms of them just getting like, are we ready for this? Are we ready? Da, 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 da. And we were like talking about the whole thing. And hey, we got a PA on so the PA ran, this is what sold it's like the birds in the shot. The PA runs out and you hear this, hey, we've got a PA on the stage. We've got like 6 minutes before the show. Let's move him off, and that sells the whole shot, So then you hear all this chatter of everyone, but it was very much the chatter and parts of it was actually chatter from the rehearsal. So you hear, but there was something about what people loved was they could hear the cues. Okay, cue this, cue this, cue this, cue this, cue. And so in the last 2 minutes, there was this energy and people were so excited and nervous that we had made a mistake. And there was all this like crazy, buildup on the chats against it. And then right when it gets into, queue open, it just went right into the show, and it was, people loved it. Like it was but it's so hard to get we only got to do it once because the client was adventurous. Everyone's too afraid or it's too much work or whatever, but it was literally the best open we've ever done. Mickey and then Jeff.
Just going back to what Maggie was mentioning earlier about the clients being on comms, I think like there's no way you can get rid of that, small talk chatter. But I've noticed that in terms of improving the technical quality of it, they kind of self-correct each other depending on who exactly from the clients are on that channel.
You go, Jeff.
Well, they stopped broadcasting it now, but remember a few years back, there was that fashion show about Victoria's Secret, which was actually scripted with the comms chatter part of it. I loved watching it just for the comms chatter. I hardly watched anything else on it.
That was Hamish Hamilton.
Well, and
Hamish was the director.
One of the things that I do plan to do when we do this Mad in the Kitchen is the first ones you'll hear, someone, calling it, but when we get some of the TDs, you'll probably me calling the first one, and I'm not necessarily that great at it, but as we get other ones, listening to different TDs calling the show will be interesting, as we kind of keep moving forward with it. Okay, let's jump into the questions.
All right, first one's coming in from Mark Hadley in Seattle. He asks, can we look at some comm interfaces on screen?
We're not really set up for it right now, or unless Jeff is. Can you show yours?
Yeah, I've got one. Hang on just a second.
Okay.
Somebody give me shareability.
Go.
Ready? Okay.
There's Fenwick's. That's go ahead.
So this is VCOM. This is my favorite. This is with Unity right behind it as a second, but this is more in tune to a full matrix type setup. So that thing that we were mentioning earlier, Alex pointed out, is like having X amount of PLs. This gives you as many PLs as you want because you can set it up exactly to your needs and still have direct connects to each one. So on the left side here, you toggle the green to listen, you toggle the right to talk on that channel, and if you want to talk to someone direct, you just touch theirs and then it calls back. This is a new interface that is actually all WebRTC based, so it actually, which if you need it, allows you to put in video streams off of URLs also, which is kind of cool for monitoring at the same time. So if you give a person a feed, like for instance for producing, you can give them a feed of the comms, but you can also embed an actual player on it at the same time, which is something new.
That's great. And then Fenwick had this is Unity comms. This is what.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's the Unity comms there. And I don't think we have any other ones really ready to show. But
well, what's nice about
it? Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Fenwick.
If I could just take a quick second, one of the things that's cool about this, besides being able to talk on a channel, which you can predefine, and each user can be given a certain number of channels to view. So that, watch this blue glow here. This is Mickey talking to me directly. And if I open up my direct comms, this allows me to talk to individual people point to point. This is the thing that you and I were talking about a couple weeks ago, Alex. So I don't have to have a channel for Mickey, but I do have a point to point. And then all of this, if I open up one more button, all of this can be, and there's Guy talking to me. sorry. All of this can be programmed to a specific button on my my Stream Deck. So if I want to put Guy is on a button. If I want to put TJ on, say, button 27 down here, I come down here to this, and no, that's not how I do it. I can't remember exactly how I do it, but I can program it to a button on the Stream Deck. And you can get to the point where you're just popping through, you get it laid out in a good spot, and you're not even looking. And it's like, I'm talking to Preto, I'm talking to Doug, I'm talking to the client, boop, 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 super fast. And I got to say, I've worked in $10 million production trucks. I've worked in, $100,000 control rooms. I am more versatile sitting right here at my desk than I've ever been in my career before.
Right. And we're going to keep, and comms, and one of the reasons we're spending so much time on comms as well is that for virtual events, as Maggie underlined a little earlier, is that it's probably more important than it ever has been in the past. Like it is, comms are, the comm architecture is about to get super complex. As we go into digital first events where you have multiple local crews managing things on, in 4 or 5 cities, and then you have, 6 hosts that are in different studios, and then people, working, running the gear and everything in the cloud. You're going to have these massive loops of comms that have to be managed, and it's going to become more and more complex. And that's why we're going to keep on, like we're doing with other things that we think are growth areas, keep on paying attention to comms, probably more than anywhere else in the world, most likely, because because I know how important it is for us to get good at this, both how we act on it, what technology we use, how we use them. Let's go to the next question.
Next one's coming in from Michael Peters in Oakton, Virginia. I'm on vMix, and one of my clients is asking me to look into Agent IC. There is also an iOS app called Zello. Both use cell phones to communicate to whoever is on the channel. Does anyone have pros and cons on either Zello or Agent IC? What are their costs?
The price point is the part with Agent IC. Agent IC is going to cost a lot more money. Fundamentally, you're buying licenses, so it's like the lowest entry point for Agent IC is, I think, about $2,300 for the IQ box, and then you're paying, I think, is it $250 a person, for the license, so you can have up to 8 licenses on that box, and those are really that's a pretty basic setup. As far as, and I think that those are only PLs. I don't think you can matrix, point to points. Once you want to go to point to points, you're going to start to go to things like the clips, clips, and now you're talking real money, tens of thousands of dollars to get in. I will say that I still prefer I vastly prefer the Agent IC over everything I've used so far, as far as what's on my phone. I feel like the pieces there, I have a couple little complaints about it, but in general, I like it a lot. It doesn't work over well. None of them work super well over Wi-Fi, in my opinion. But they work. They just can be a little glitchy. But I like Agent IC a lot. But even we are moving more and more to Unity, just from a cost perspective. It makes more sense. And we have Tucker. Any other? Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Zello is effectively a walkie-talkie. It's not a duplex solution. So most comms you want to have duplex so that you can actually have quick, fast interactions without necessarily having to wait for somebody to finish. Right. And Zello works very much like a radio, and it's not pleasant when you're trying to do production like that.
And what I'd say is that the evolution for most people will be, you get Unity. The first thing you'll do is you'll get Tucker to set you up with just some Unity stuff that you can make work. Then you might take over that and manage the Unity yourself. Then you might look at VCOM as something that is, it's going to cost a little bit more. I don't know what the price point is for VCOM, but
it is definitely, it rises between Unity and ClearCom. Have to do a frame for ClearCom, but the capabilities, they're not really comparable. It's a massive difference, big jump in capabilities.
Yeah. And then the big thing is that, and then from the ClearCom stuff is really where it really takes off, is when you're embedding it with free speak, and you've got a bunch of stuff on the ground, and there's a lot of hardware, and there's a lot of those bits and pieces, and that hardware does make a difference. And so that's where the ClearCom really steps up. But I think as you're getting started, I think that the Unity is a great, and then Read will become something that people talk about as well. it's, Mercedes of doing this, although I personally think it's overpriced for what you get, and I don't like the buttons. You when you use comms a lot, you'll learn that people get really touchy about hardware interfaces, and they like this kind of button and not that kind of button. I don't like the Reader buttons; they're too soft. Go ahead, Marty.
So VCOM is a really interesting product because it can work with iOS and Android just as well. You can put those your multi-button control panel right on your phone.
And PC and Mac too. Don't forget that. That's a big difference. That's one thing I don't like about Agent IC.
Yeah,
is you don't have PC or Mac, and that hurts the production.
Yeah, so VCOM is all web driven, so you get a control panel on any device.
Yeah.
One of the other interesting features of VCOM, and I haven't done this myself, but you can incorporate live video into each of the button keys. So you're looking at that person on screen, or what that person is shooting. You see their shot.
Right. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Art By in Cupertino. Can you take a 4-channel clear comm and allow channels to talk to each other rather than relay a message via the base unit, aka where the director sits? He has a note here that says lights and CG ops be able to talk directly.
Go ahead, Jeff.
You definitely can. You just have to tie the channels together there's usually switches on there, or you could use an external device like a 4-wire converter that sums the channels too. Then the other side of that is you take it all out into VCOM or in Unity and then mix it back to itself.
Yeah, but with I know what you're talking about, the 4-channel analog, and yeah, you'd have to feed it back in to make that work, or hit the switches should let you combine some of them. There is a 10-channel ClearComm analog that has, man, you can set up a very complex. It's got a bunch of sliders on the front, and you can set up a very complex relationship. That's what we went to before we moved to an Eclipse. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Why doesn't office hours use comms among all the panelists?
It's bad enough that they're all texting between each other during the show. It's enough of a distraction. adding audio would make it even worse. Right? It's just hard to be present. The key to the show is for people to be as present as possible. So when they're doing other things, as a far off warning, I will just letting everybody know that distracted driving at some point will be. Right now we're dealing with mics and then cameras, and then distracted driving will become an issue somewhere in the fall. Next question.
Ken Jordan here on the panel from Epson UK asks, can you talk about what types of comms equipment Matt in the Kitchen hosts and crew will require?
We're going to be using Unity. So Tucker's helping us with so we'll be using Unity, and then in the office where we are, we're going to be standing up the BSS 806, which will do most of the inner office talkback and everything else that we need. Will all be done, and how we tie it back in. So it'll be a mixture of hardware and Unity to make that work. Next question.
Ronnie in Norway is asking, what would be the ideal blueprint on what groups and roles should be set up? How to be really efficient on comms?
So there probably should be a general way to do it. Most of the time, it's a bespoke thing for us. Like there's definitely production cameras, audio is an obvious. Those are the 3 obvious ones that you get up there, and then you have like client. So those are 4 channels that we will create for almost everything. And then what other ones a lot of times are dependent on what we're doing. Go ahead, Jeff.
Engineering is one in TV we would use all the time, because in the camera chains, you would have production or camera PL, and then you would have an engineering to be able to talk directly to those cameras if necessary.
And then oftentimes the audio will have their own PL that is just for audio, so they can just talk amongst themselves. But the camera one is really about calling the show. So the TD will talk into the camera one to the camera operators, and you really don't want other people on that one. Like you want the TD to, and a lot of that has to do with chain of command as well. You don't want clients especially, but everyone in the crew telling the cameras what to do during the show. The only person that should tell the cameras what to do during the show is the TD. Go ahead, Marty, real quick.
Lighting might be another channel. Maybe even security might be another channel. But don't forget to have a couple of spare channels for private communication.
Well, and again, what we do, because we're using most of the stuff that we're doing are some version of a matrix, whether it's Unity or ClearCom or whatever. So for us, those channels are point to points. For private communication, we're just privately talking to each other. But to your point, there's no way for us to do like 3 of us or something like that. Go ahead, Maggie.
The other thing that Tucker suggested that we really benefited from was having a help channel where, like, if you don't know how to use comms or you don't know what's going on, just having an extra help channel. And so that's a standard thing we do now.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. I didn't think of that. Next question. We do have a Tucker Direct when we have Tucker work on it so that we can ask Tucker for something. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Bill Hops in San Jose. Where can we find a comms glossary / etiquette guide for the USA that can be shared with crew?
We should build one as a group. We should kind of like, as a group, we should build our version of what that looks like. And a glossary of how to do it, and a little office hours guide to. We probably could do this for a lot of things, but an office hour guide to comms, and to try to take all of our backgrounds and find something that we all, as a Congress, agree that this is the way we'll do our shows, and or at least the shows that we do together. This is the way we want to do it. Go ahead, Chris.
Several years ago, I don't remember where you shared it. It was probably on some video or discussion that you were doing, Alex, where you were explaining proper slate etiquette. Mm-hmm. And I remember, in a nutshell, hold the slate up, get it framed, get it focused, then roll. First frame of every clip, you see the slate. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, that Alex, there he goes, making his little rules. And the guy's crazy. And then I spent a day hunting out slates in 100 clips. And I was like, the guy's a genius.
Well, you just, so there's go ahead, Chris.
But my point is that you're totally onto something here. I think posting it, making it a standard that people can adopt. I mean, how many people follow you on Twitter? There's a lot of people that are going to see the post about here's our example.
Well, that's why we should be careful. That's why that's why we want to do it as a Congress and kind of come up with like, this is the way we, some little guide I think would be useful to kind of push people towards. Yeah. Go ahead. But yeah, the thing is that there's 2 things. One is doing a lot of something and then being critical of it. Is something that I tend to do a lot of, is just constantly looking for, there's got to be a cheaper, faster, whatever way to do this. And I don't necessarily go to it immediately, but I think about it. What is this? I'm always trying to shave off, a couple edges, of everything all the time, including like how I cut my mushrooms in the morning, for my scrambled eggs or whatever. I everything to me is efficient, is shaving off another sharp edge. Mickey and then Sky.
Maybe, one thing that would help would be knowing and understanding the 10 codes. Not everyone uses it, but it's good to have it in the wetware for when it comes up.
Absolutely, Sky.
And again, in the wetware, we're also now global in our communications. So we're now not just regionalizing from East Coast to West Coast. We're now Southern Hemisphere. We're Europe. We're now homogenizing that wetware in the moment. So I like the Congress idea a lot.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
I just have a question writ large. How common have all of you found that using the NATO alphabet is a thing over comms? Alpha, Tango.
Yeah. I mean, we do it when we're calling stuff out, but not usually that much. I mean, but if you do it, if I have to spell something out, I will almost always use NATO or military terms. So and they're slightly different depending on whether it's NATO or military.
I say that because passwords tend to be a thing, and there is nothing worse than what? No. It was capital. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Next question.
Keenan Campbell with a 1020 of Princeton, Illinois. Can we do a second hour on distributed comms with Unity, etc.? More of a learning lab.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can do that. So just put it in the second hour, and maybe we'll do it like a Saturday afternoon comms. We'll get Tucker
that was
in
smooth,
here
guy.
Yeah, that was good. Next question.
Jason Brown in Philadelphia. Where can I find instructions for setting up those thin over-ear mics with a MacBook Pro personal or Windows 10 laptop work? I see several folks using them in this session. I did some previous research, but didn't know what exact parts I needed.
I think that these are the Pyle or the Pulsons. By the way, I got prodded about, I had said that I was gonna test the little stereo to mono 1/8" converter to see if it worked with the TechRise. And I just decided to buy like everything related to this so I can figure this out. So I have like 8 US of these little headset to USB converters coming. I'm going to carefully open them. If they don't work really well, I'm going to send them back. So I don't have to, but they were all like $10 each. So I was just like, I'm just spending $80 and just, so they're all coming in. I'm going to test a bunch of them. We'll have a discussion. What I want to do is put them through and we'll look at them and we'll look at each one of them in the same mic, going into a bunch of different converters and looking at the frequency response levels, everything like, because we keep on saying the Sabrent is less, but how much less, and is it really less, or is it just us making it up? So all of them are coming in. And I can see the TechRise has definitely got redesigned. So there is a new version. Now I know what it looks like because I bought it, the 2-channel and the 3-channel. So we'll see what they look like. Next question.
Last one's up from Stephen Richards in Ottawa, Ontario. Does anyone know a TD for a complex production like the Met Opera Live video that could discuss this comm subject in a future office hours?
Yeah, definitely know some. I mean, I don't know if they did the opera, whatever, but so there's a couple of people that I've talked to about it that have already said they're willing to come in, and we just haven't scheduled it. But I think that getting a couple of TDs in for just a show about cutting shows, like calling shows, would be a pretty interesting one, pretty interesting second hour. So we'll work on getting that sorted out. And is that it? Did we make it to the end? No stragglers. All right. Well, I have to admit, when I scheduled this, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if people are going to want to talk about comms again for another hour, but it's something that, again, I think is so, I actually was inspired because Maggie said she's writing this article last week or earlier this week or whatever, or last week. And I was like, well, if she's paying that much attention to it, and I think it's really important, we'll probably, we should probably talk about it some more. Again, I think that we really want to look at a lot of the core pieces of what we do in production as the art of whatever that is, and look at how do we refine our art all the time, whether it's shading cameras or audio or comms or mics or lighting. These are all things that we should be constantly making that's what we're here for, right? Is to get better at doing these things and making each other better at it. And because I think we'll stand out, as we keep on doing it, doing that process. So thanks to the audience. Great questions. Sorry, we got to it at the very end, but we were having so much fun talking. But thanks for a great set of questions. Definitely a great set of questions in the first hour. So the producers have done their job once again. Thanks to the panel for great answers and great discussion. Yet another fun day. Somehow we've done it again. I have 370 or 360 some that we've done that have been fun. Pretty good track record. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you in the post show.